cozy drink and a cozy night, and a September wrap-up. What else could a girl personally ask for? Books, a chai latte, and you guys. My night's complete. Hello friends, and welcome to my September wrap-up. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of September, plus 2 things that I read in August that for some reason, I don't know how I missed talking about these in my last wrap-up, but for some reason I missed 2 things that I read in the month of August, and so I'm going to be covering them in this video as well. And we have got a nice little array of books. Just let me show you real quick. Let me show you. After I take a sip though. Oat milk just makes everything better. Can I say that? Like chai latte with oat milk? Don't miss out. These right here are all of the books that I read in the month of September plus August. I don't have the other 2 things I'm going to be talking about physically, so I will pop up a picture when the time is due, but we have got a nice little assortment of mangas, manhwas, literary fiction slash romances, and then thrillers, more romances, and then some fantasy. So I think it was a really well-rounded month. I also had some disappointments, I'm not going to lie, so even the ratings are not all 5 stars, so we'll have like a little bit of everything in this rundown, which I think will make things quite interesting. So I hope you guys are ready. I hope you're kicked back with your nice little cozy drink if you have one, and that you're ready to talk about all of these books. Also, let a girl know, what did you guys read in the month of September? Any new loves? Any new disappointments? Any books that you are looking forward to reading soon that maybe you didn't get to in September? Let a girl know all of that, and let's talk about all the books that I read in September. And friends, we started off strong with a 4-star, and that is Solo Leveling Volume 1. This is a manhwa, and alongside Villains Are Destined to Die, this is something that was recommended to me quite a lot, and I gave in, I bought it, and I read it. And in this one, we follow Jinwoo, who is considered as the weakest hunter of all time, of all mankind. He is an E-rank hunter, which means that his abilities may not be as great as his fellow peers, and therefore he is looked down on a lot because of that, because a lot of people have better abilities, better missions, better pay, better everything. However, because he is underestimated, people forget to take into account his intellect. He may not be the highest ranking, but he is immensely smart, and despite all of the bullying and discrimination that he goes through because of his rank, he stays being a hunter because he has got bills to pay, he has got a family to support because nobody else is doing it, and so he stays for that reason, which is one of the reasons why I love this manhwa so much, is that the character's got like a very clear set of motivations as to why he is doing what he's doing, and I do hope that we see more of like that familial dynamic going forward, because I think it's quite interesting that he mentions that being a hunter, despite having abilities, is optional, and he chooses that out of his free will because, again, of his family. And the entire volume basically spans this mission that he is on, that he is not supposed to be in, but he is because of the pay. And as people start dying and riddles and puzzles pop up for people to solve in order to go by unscathed and close out the mission and eradicate the evil that is plaguing this particular volume, he finds himself the most useful member of the team, which is quite hilarious to see so many people that are quote-unquote so well trained and so much more capable than he is be so stunned at the fact that he is so much more than what people lead on. And so I really enjoyed this. It was super action-packed, it was super creepy in the moments that it needed to be, and like overall it was just a great time. And this volume really just feels like a prologue for what's to follow. Like, this is the story setup. We don't see much more outside of this one mission and exactly what happens that is like the big catalyst for his arc. And so I'm excited to buy volume 2, read that, and see where the story goes, because I've got no idea. At this point, I'm not going in any particular order. I'm just grabbing books as I took them out of the bookshelves. But next up is romantic comedy, and I gave this 3 stars. Like, it was very middle of the road for me. Finds that it kind of lacked a lot of the connection, chemistry, and development between the love interests that I typically look for or want out of a romance novel or something that is tagged as romantic in any way, shape, or form. So in this one, we follow Sally, who is a writer for a show called The Night Owls. This show is set up kind of like an SNL, Saturday Night Live, where you have skits and comedy shows and musical guests and guest hosts. And Sally obviously writes the skits, and she works very closely with actors and whatnot to get things prepped and ready for the night of the showing. And the book particularly follows her as she meets one of the not only musical guests but also guest hosts, Noah Brewster, who has recently gotten to set so that they can plan ahead and prep and get everything ready for his specific show. And as all things go, the main character believes that somebody like Kim could never fall in love or like somebody like her because she is not conventionally attractive, or she is not like over the top attractive. She has got like this entire theory called the Danny Horst rule, where a man who is potentially not as attractive ends up dating a woman who is like smoking hot, and then the reverse doesn't tend to happen as much, or at least in the setting of the book, it doesn't tend to happen. And so a big chunk of the book is spent in the dynamics of the show of the Night Owls, which I thought was super interesting. Like, honestly, I thought that was the most interesting part of the book. It was kind of that slice of life inner look into how a show like that could potentially or is run. And so I found that immensely interesting, and seeing Sally navigate the stress and the commotion of all of that while also being incredibly nice and present when it came to accommodating the guest host. I thought all of that was super cool. When it came to the romance though, I felt like it was super forced. Like, Sally has this tendency in the book to fall in love or start liking people that either very clearly don't like her back, or she starts making up all these ideas in her head as to why people like her, which, I mean, she's all of us. Like, I think we've all been there and done that, but I wasn't particularly drawn to that side of her character, and it was like a big thing for a big chunk of the book. And then when we get into part 2, the book takes place during the panini, and so there's a huge emphasis in correspondence during the panini and how that brought a lot of people close and together, to the point where a lot of romances, unlikely at that, kind of struck up because everybody was locked up and everybody was looking for human connection. And so I feel like the emphasis of the book was kind of like a bit all over the place, but at its core, it's like human connection, whatever that looks like. And so it was just a bit all over the place. It was a little bit unexpected and a lot of routes it took. And so while I enjoyed the audio, because the audiobook was really good, and truly the audiobook was the only reason why I kept going, because the narrator was fantastic, I don't know that I would have necessarily finished this book had I not been listening to that. So it was just, you know, middle of the road. Like, it was okay. The writing was really good, but we got what we got. Immortal Longings was next, and I have to say this is probably, if not my biggest disappointment of the year, then quite up there, because I was really looking forward to this. It was one of my most anticipated releases. This was Chloe Gong's adult debut. She's only been publishing YA in the past with the These Violent Delights and Foul Lady Fortune duologies, and I, again, was quite excited to see what she would bring into the adult space, especially because it was pitched as a Hunger Games style book, and on top of that, it's an Antony and Cleopatra retelling. However, I did not love this, and I think one of my main arguments for this book is that if you're going to use a comp like the Hunger Games, and this applies to anything and everything, not just Immortal Longings, I expect excellence, because a comp like the Hunger Games is not something that I take lightly, and I think that a lot of people don't take lightly, because when you talk about the Hunger Games, you're not talking about a game where kids kill each other for the sake of killing. You're talking about a very insidious system politically that utilizes these games as a means to distract the audience, the people, the citizenship from what's actually occurring behind the scenes, or what has happened historically. And there are so many other themes going into the Hunger Games that make it so complex and interesting that when I see the comp, I expect something equally as complex, and I did not get that with this book. So in this one, we follow Kala Tuolemi, who is a princess in hiding. 5 years ago, she committed treason, and she has been hiding ever since, but she is hell-bent and determined on finishing out her job, killing every last monarch she has to, in order to reset the system and basically bring an era of peace and equality in a way that hasn't been seen before. On the other side, we follow Anton Makusa, who is an exiled aristocrat, and his childhood love has been laying in a coma for years and years and years, and because of their distinct situations, both of them decide to enter a game that happens, if not every year, I can't remember the exact details, then every other year, where people are set to kill each other to win the ultimate prize, and with that you can do whatever you want. And so Kala's hope is that by winning the game she can kill the king, and Anton's hope is that by winning he can actually save his love. And the book at its core is just confusing because, again, there's a huge emphasis on the game aspect of it, but because we don't understand the machinations of the world, we don't understand how things move, we don't understand why why these games are so important, why they're happening, how the economy moves, the intricate patterns of monarchy in this particular system. We don't really know much of all of those things for, I think, me as a reader personally to care or understand as to why the games are happening other than senseless killing. And then on top of that, a lot of the magic system is also like contradictory and hypocritical, which I'm sure it's intended to be, but at the same time it's a bit frustrating that there's a huge emphasis and rule that nobody can jump, which basically means that you're able to push your chi out of your body and into somebody else's body to control it, but only a handful of people are able to perform this motion, and yet the royals are constantly doing it, but there's actually like not a lot of punishment, it seems like, for jumping anyways. So it's like it's a suggestion more than anything that you don't do it, despite them saying that it's more of a law that you don't do it. And so it's just quite interesting how that whole thing moves as well. Also, for something that's meant to be so cutthroat, I virtually felt no tension while these games were happening because we see them so offhandedly that it doesn't even feel like a weighty part of the plot. People are not put into an arena, people are not put into the same area. It's just a, hey, if you stumble across this person in the streets of the city, you have the free will to murder them because they're part of the game. And so I didn't feel like the stakes were high at all. And then to top things off, to make the experience even more confusing, I didn't feel any chemistry between Anton and Kala, which is supposed to be the main pairing of the book, and yet I felt absolutely nothing. And to make things more infuriating, because it doesn't end there, the twists were like super obvious to me personally, and I know that it's more of like a personal thing than anything else. And really like the only thing I enjoyed about the book was the ending and then the descriptions of like the city, because we spent so much time in that. I'm not even kidding, guys. Every few pages we'd get these massive descriptions of San, that is one of the cities, and then R, which is another one of the cities, and how they juxtapose each other because one is like super wealthy and the other one isn't. And even then we don't really dive deep into why that is, like it's so surface level. And so I found bits and pieces interesting, but because it didn't have kind of like the depth that I would have liked, it all kind of fell on empty ears. Is that the saying? Yeah, I just didn't really love this too much. So I ended up giving this 2 stars. Don't know that I'm going to read the second one because I don't know that I have like the patience for it, because I would have loved to find out a lot of the info that I was missing in this one instead of a sequel. Like I find that so infuriating. And so there's kind of that. Another disappointment, I'm not going to lie. The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I was really excited to read this because I read the Inheritance games and then also the Hawthorne Legacy, and I really enjoyed both of those, and I was expecting grandness, grandeur, and just a bunch of good things from Jennifer Lynn Barnes in the Natural series. And I do think this book is at its core a product of its time. Like you can tell this book was published in 2013 and there's not a lot to do on that end. Like it's just what it is. I didn't really love it. I am curious though, like I enjoyed it enough to want to go into the second one to see how it progressively gets better, if that. So in this one we follow Cassie Hobbs, who is very gifted at profiling. She was taught by her mother from a very early age to just analyze people, look at how they're dressing, how they're standing, which way they're looking, do they have any micro expressions when they are talking, do they have any sort of specific motions they do when they're lying, can you spot the lie? And so she is recruited because of that skill by the FBI, because they are making up this group called the Naturals, which is comprised of very gifted teenagers. So it's like a very Criminal Minds, CSI, lie to me kind of book. The ending kind of unmade the book for me a bit, because up to that point I did think that the characters were a bit caricaturish, because you see them be so over the top with like, you're lying, you're profiling, you're the tech stuff, you're the guy that analyzes this. They never turn it off. Like it's so on and so on page all of the time that it doesn't feel real. And so that bit was a bit infuriating because it made the characters literally feel like cartoons instead of real people. A lot of it was towards the end so campy that I honestly could not take it. This is also coming from somebody that I enjoy camp, but not when it's like overdone to the point where I'm like, really? Like, to that extent is just a bit too much, but it's just kind of what it is, you know? But the book was enjoyable because you do see the training aspect of it, which I was really interested in seeing. Because they are teenagers and because they don't know a lot of like the inner happenings of something like the Bureau, I really wanted to see, would they train them? Would they take them out on, you know, mock missions to be able to hone in these skills and perfect them? And they do, and we do see that, which I think is quite fascinating. And so that bit I really did enjoy, and I love that we get to see a case so closely and so connected to, I guess, like the characters' lives. Like, that also was super fascinating. It was okay. Like, it was, again, very middle of the road. It was a 2.5 star. I am looking forward to the second one, and I do hope it gets better. There's kind of that. You guys are probably tired of hearing about villains are destined to die, but I promise you, I'll be very short with this. Villains are destined to die follows a main character who goes inside a video game after she falls asleep playing it, and she wakes up playing as the villain, Penelope Eckhart. And the whole point of the game is to win affection points. If you play in easy mode, super easy to earn them. If you play it in hard mode, super easy to lose them and be killed by one of the love interests in the game. So because the main character has experience playing the game, she kind of knows how to navigate it better than actually playing it, you know, because she's already done that whole motion. This second volume was top tier. I enjoyed this even more than volume 1. Like, volume 1 was really, really good. It was a perfect setup, but this one though, we see so much progression and so much more world expansion in this one that it just gets even more intricate, more fascinating, and the stakes are constantly being elevated for the main character, because the question that remains up in the air is, when the easy mode character Yvonne, the lost daughter of the Duke, which is like the whole point of this game, comes back to, and people don't need Penelope anymore to pose as her, what's going to happen? And I'm so excited when we do get there to see how the main character is going to navigate that, because I have no answer for it. I'm like, what are you gonna do? Is she going to reach 100% of any affection points? Is even the main character going to fall in love with any of these characters, or is she just viewing it as a game? So many questions up in the air. It's so fascinating. It's so good. I had a great time with this, and I can't wait to read more. I also read volume 3 this month, so that was fun. And volume 4, I've been told, is like the best out of all of them, so we'll see what I think about it, because I do need to buy it and read it, but this series is just, it's so good. You're also probably tired of hearing me talk about My Roommate is a Vampire, so I'll keep this short because I've talked about this book a lot ever since I read it. But in this one, we follow Cassie, who is a struggling artist, and because she is struggling, she is being evicted from her household. She looks up on Craigslist some sort of ad for a rental, finds one, super cheap, super suspicious because it's freaking Chicago, and so she goes and inspects it. She loves it. She takes it. Then she doesn't know, but she does realize eventually that her new roommate is a vampire who just wants to learn how to navigate the current modern world, because he has no idea how to use a cell phone, no idea how to take out the trash, no idea how to order a coffee in a coffee shop. And this is the most oblivious man ever that ends up buying her a whole Le Creuset set of pans and pots and everything because she needs to eat. She's like, where are the pans? And he's like, is this sufficient? I don't know if I bought the right one. Sir, you just dropped $1,000 in pots and pans. I'm sure she's appreciative. Like, I'm sure it's great. Actually, if you want to send one over to me, I'd really love that too. I just loved this one. It was super low stakes, kind of similar to Legends and Lattes, where a conflict eventually does arise, but because it's supposed to be cozy and again low stakes, it's resolved super fast. You don't have to worry about anything. It's such a feel-good book. It's so ridiculous. It's so campy, but like the right amount. Literally, the vampire has got powers and it's so ridiculous. Like, his powers really are useless, like everybody claims in this book, but it's just so funny. It's not meant to be anything other than cozy, romantic, and funny, and I absolutely loved that. I also loved that dynamic of an oblivious vampire being taught how to navigate the modern world by the protagonist, and then the protagonist navigating an even more complicated world because of her job description and the fact that she needs a higher pay to survive in such an expensive city. And so that being juxtaposed by a guy who doesn't know how to do anything is honestly quite hilarious. hilarious and their chemistry was amazing. There's an element of like notes and letters and emails and texts in the book, which I think is so wholesome because the vampire, Frederick, he doesn't love texting, he doesn't love corresponding, but he loves it when it's her. He loves to leave her post-it notes on the kitchen table and to talk to her, and it's just so sweet because it's somebody that's like very kind of standoffish to everything and everyone, but then he's got a soft spot for her and it's so nice. But they're both like so fluffy, like neither of them are grumps, and so the book just worked for me. It was really, really nice. It was a quick little read, and honestly it's quite hilarious that he's a Swiftie or pretending to be one. It's everything. Next up, I read Sweat and Soap volumes 1 and 2, and I think I rated these respectively 3 and 5 stars. Like, the jump was quite good because in this one, it's a weird one, bear with me, but in Sweat and Soap, we follow our protagonist who works at a Japanese equivalent to a Bath and Body Works, and one day, just walking through the lobby, getting to work, it's like a regular fucking Tuesday, she stumbles upon a guy that immediately grabs her and he's like, I love the way you smell. And this girly pop has been bullied her entire life for having like the worst BO ever, and so because of it, she's so concerned always with smelling good, and this is probably the first time she's ever been told like she smells good, and he wants to study her scent because he wants to nail that for the next collection, and he wants to create a soap that smells like her. And so they strike up this weird sort of partnership so that she can help him kind of discover that, and then they fall in love as they're at it. And volume 1 was really weird because he was like super overbearing. He was just like trapping her against the walls and going like just to like sniff her and like smell her. So like it was fucking weird. I was also reading this in public. I'm sure I had people side-eyeing me because they were like, I'm sorry, what? Okay, so my camera ran out of battery. I had to take care of that real quick. So I'm sure the angle's a little bit different, but it was weird. Volume 1 was weird, I'm not gonna lie. But then we move into volume 2 and it was so wholesome and like so good, and the chemistry between them is so phenomenal, and just the progression of their relationship got progressively, you know, redundantly better. We go from a very weird volume to a more mundane volume. Now that they're together in volume 2, we see their everyday life trying to navigate working in the same space while also being together as a couple. And we see them meeting family members, and we see the introduction of the main character's brother, and he's hilarious. He's a chef, and it's just so good because, as always, as any manga goes, he is hell-bent on bringing this man down and not letting him be with his sister because his sister deserves better. But also, why is his sister with anyone? Because she's fucking weird. And so the element of all of that put together was so nice to read about. And again, it just got, as time went on, less weird, which I appreciated, and I'm so excited to read volume 3. It's a nice little ridiculous story to read, but I'm having a great time. And then for the very last thing I read in the month of September, we have got Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson, previously known to me as Vesperdine because I genuinely thought that was how you pronounced it. But this one was good. I gave it 4 stars, and Margaret Rogerson has always been kind of up and down for me. Like, my experience with her has been quite interesting, but I was pleasantly surprised to see this be a 4-star. I feel like everything that I enjoyed about Sorcery of Thorns, which I didn't end up loving, was included in here. We have got an animal companion, and then we have got a demonic entity that's supposed to be evil based on what everybody's saying, but they're actually quite endearing and sassy, and they've just got a great personality, and there's actually no love interest in this one. There is absolutely no romance in Vespertine, which is a 180 from her previous books that are very romance heavy. In this one, we follow Artemisia, who is training to be a Grey Sister, and Grey Sisters are like leveled up nuns that cleanse the bodies of the dead so that they can pass on as peacefully as they can, because they don't tend to in this world. And depending on how people pass on or not, and if they die peacefully or not, they manifest differently as spirits, and so that gives them different ranks, different abilities, different threat levels, and so the Grey Sisters are basically a measure to mitigate that as much as possible. Except that her convent is attacked by a group of possessed soldiers, and she is tasked to take a saint's relic with her, which holds a super powerful demon hell-bent on possession, to protect it. And in the journey, she finds out that she's actually able to use it, but the art of that is only known to the Vespertines, which are quite extinct, and so now she has to bear the burden of this relic and not not know how to use it in the slightest because nobody's been teaching that recently. And what is at the beginning a super standoffish main character who doesn't trust anybody, who doesn't have friends, doesn't want to make friends, is quite anxious in social situations, at the end becomes somebody who welcomes in found family and friends and love and joy in whatever form it comes to her, and somebody who learns how to exert boundaries, and somebody who gets quite comfortable in her own skin and in interacting with this demon that at first all it wanted to do was consume her. And so from both ends, even for the Revenant, they learn how to better navigate this relationship between the both of them so that that give and take is more equal than the opposite. And so that side of the book was super, super good. The magic system and the world building of this was also so fascinatingly different to anything I've read before. I had never read a book where the convention of religion was such a huge emphasis into the story. Like maybe with Way of Kings and with Mistborn, but aside from that, not a whole lot. In this one, there's this wider conversation about how religion is sort of like a double-edged sword for a lot of people, where it can be healing, but it can also be a place where a lot of corruption and trauma is fostered depending on your experience and where exactly you're going. And so it's not necessarily blind to the faults of the convention, whilst also recognizing the beauty of it and the solace that people can find if they do make their way there. And so the duality of the conversation I found was super beautiful, and in general the story was just super interesting because of it. And so I had a great time. This is a series or a duology, a trilogy. I don't even know what this is supposed to be, but I'm excited for the next one. So there's kind of that. The audio was also really good, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but I gave it 4 stars. It was a good time. And that's it, friends. Those are all of the books that Mel read in the month of September. I hope you guys had fun watching this. I hope it was a good time. If you did enjoy it, give it a massive thumbs up down below. That's a really great thing to do these days. And comment down below if you've read any of the books, any of the graphic novels that I talked about. Did you enjoy them? Did you not enjoy them? Are you looking forward to reading any of them? And again, what did you read in the month of September? Any loves, any disappointments, anythings? Let a girl know down in the comments. And if you reach the end of the video, for the naturals, let's leave like a magnifying glass emoji or anything detective related. Let's leave that down in the comments if you've made it to the very end. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already for more content like this. And if you want to support the channel further, Patreon is always a thing. It's always linked down below in case you want extra videos, live shows, weekly updates, and just more of your girl. It really supports the channel. It's a really great time in turn, and I just love it so much. So that's always an option if you guys want it. Always linked down below alongside all of the socials. Love you all so much. I hope you're having a great October so far, and I will see you guys in the next one.